Today, the war with Iran at least briefly became a hot war again because it's unclear who fired the first shot or whether this means the ceasefire is over. U.S. Central Command says that Iranian forces launched missiles, drones, and small boats at 3 U.S. Navy destroyers. The U.S. says that those attacks were unprovoked. The U.S. says that in response to those attacks, U.S. forces eliminated inbound threats and targeted drone and missile launch sites. The U.S. says that those attacks do not constitute a resumption of war and that the U.S. does not seek escalation. Now, Iran is telling a different story. A spokesperson for the Iranian military told Iranian state media that the U.S. started today's fighting by launching unprovoked attacks against ships in the Strait of Hormuz. The spokesperson said that the U.S. airstrikes along the coast hit civilian areas, and maybe, most importantly, Iran accused the U.S. of violating the war's ceasefire. Tonight, in a phone call with ABC News, President Trump called today's strikes, quote, just a love tap, insisting that the ceasefire was still in effect. And in a social media post moments after that call, Trump warned that if Iran does not get a deal signed fast, the U.S. will, quote, knock them out a lot harder and more violently than we saw today. So where do things stand? Is this war close to over, close to restarting in full force? It's really hard to say. This all comes on a day where we woke up to news that pokes a big, huge hole in the Trump administration's assertion that Iran is close to caving. Because today, the Washington Post reported on a confidential CIA analysis that estimates that Iran can outlast Trump's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz for months. Well, Trump has been insisting that Iran's economy is crashing. The CIA estimate says that Iran can survive the U.S. blockade for 90 to 120 days, or maybe even longer, before facing severe economic hardship. Joining me now is former CIA Director John Brennan. Director Brennan, thank you, as always, for being here. Let me start by just getting your reaction to the trading of strikes between the U.S. and Iran today. What do you think that means? What do you see as the status of the ceasefire, I guess, at this moment?
Well, I think the forces, U.S. naval forces, as well as the Iranians, are watching each other very carefully. And I do believe CENTCOM's portrayal of what happened, which was the Iranians probably fired on U.S. naval vessels that were either in an area of the strait that the Iranians might have viewed as provocative or near the Iranian coast. And the Iranians fired first, and then the U.S. Navy responded in kind to eliminate those targets and probably strike some other facilities or launchers that they viewed as threatening. So I don't think this is leading to a quick escalation at all. I don't think either side wants that, but it's unsurprising that some of these incidents take place because we have a large number of U.S. naval vessels in the region, and the Iranians along the coast there, I think, are primed and ready to react if they feel as though there's maybe a U.S. naval vessel that might be getting a little bit too close to the shore.
I wanted to ask you about this Washington Post reporting. I mean, because one of the things that struck me most about it, well, a lot of things, but one was that there were a number of sources. I mean, 4 sources, 4 people, presumably all within the administration, maybe are people with knowledge of it, because this document was given to administration policymakers, basically leaking a confidential.
Donald Trump is turning the White House into Mar-a-Lago. And honestly, I don't think people fully understand how strange that actually is. This isn't just Trump likes gold. Everybody already knows that. It feels psychological. I'm Andrew, also known as Mr. Earth Rebirth, and lately every time footage comes out of the Oval Office or the Cabinet Room, something feels different. Like the building itself is slowly being transformed into a monument to one person's ego. And that's because it is. A top advisor to Donald Trump has given us an inside look into some of the changes to the Cabinet Room. And the weird part is, I think people have gotten so used to Trump being excessive that they don't even stop to ask what all of this is supposed to communicate. Because architecture communicates things. Power communicates through visuals long before people even speak. That's why government buildings are designed carefully in the first place. The White House was never supposed to feel like a king's palace. It was supposed to feel institutional, stable. Like the office mattered more than the individual temporarily occupying it. Most presidents made small, subtle changes. Maybe they upgraded furniture, changed portraits, but generally they understood something important. The White House belongs to the country, not to them personally. Jackie Kennedy renovated the White House too, but the goal was completely different. She worked with historians and preservation experts to restore historical authenticity and make the building feel connected to American history. The focus was on the institution itself feeling bigger than the people living there temporarily. Trump's renovations feel almost like the opposite philosophy. Jackie tried to make the White House feel historic. Trump is trying to make it feel expensive. Because everything with him is branding. It always has been. The Trump Towers, the name in giant gold letters, the penthouses, his bankrupted casinos, everything has to scream wealth, status, and luxury. And honestly, a lot of Trump's political identity works the exact same way. It's not really about governance, it's about projection, the image of power, the performance and aesthetics of power. That's why the visuals matter so much to him. And over time, that branding psychology has slowly started bleeding directly into the White House itself. I have a video as well, but here's where I think this story gets deeper than people realize. Historically, leaders obsessed with excessive displays of luxury inside government spaces usually aren't trying to communicate democracy. They're trying to communicate permanence, royalty, control.
When the CIA contradicts the commander-in-chief, someone is lying, and it is not the CIA. There's a specific kind of institutional alarm bell that goes off when senior intelligence officials start leaking classified assessments to the press. It doesn't happen casually. It doesn't happen because someone had a bad day and wanted to vent. It happens when people inside a system conclude that the public version of reality being constructed by their political leadership has diverged so completely from the actual intelligence picture that staying quiet becomes its own form of complicity. 4 sources: a confidential CIA analysis, the Washington Post. That is not a leak. That's a distress signal. The substance of what was leaked is the part that deserves the most attention. The CIA estimates Iran can outlast the American blockade of the Strait of Hormuz for 90 to 120 days, possibly longer, before facing severe economic hardship. Trump has been telling the American public repeatedly and with apparent confidence that Iran's economy is crashing, that the pressure is working, that Iran is close order is a president who needs the war to look like it is working because his approval rating is in the middle 30s and gas is at $4.48 a gallon. John Brennan's reads on the motivation behind the leak is worth taking seriously, precisely because he ran the agency. The people who handed this document to reporters aren't doing it for partisan reasons. They are doing it because they are watching the administration publicly justify continued military action on the basis of claims that the intelligence community's own assessments direct contradict. The nuclear timeline reporting from earlier in the week established the same pattern. Trump, Hexet, and Rubio have all justified this war by claiming it set back Iran's nuclear program. U.S. intelligence reportedly believes the nuclear timeline is essentially unchanged from before the first strike. Now the economic resilience assessments lands the same way. The gap between the public justification and that classified reality isn't a rounding error. It is the entire argument for the war. The love tap framing for today's strike tells you something important about where the administration head is right now. Missiles, drones, and small boats targeting 3 U.S. Navy destroyers. That's a love tap. A case fire that involves active exchanges of fire between American naval vessels and Iranian forces, that is still a case fire. The semantic gymnastics being performed in real time aren't just politically embarrassing. They reflect a common level confusion about what this military operation is actually doing and what success looks like. When your president is calling combat engagement a love tap on a phone call with ABC News and simultaneously warning of more violent strikes if Iran doesn't signal a deal fast, you are watching someone manage a war primarily through its optics rather than its strategic logic. Iran's position in this negotiation has been strengthened, not weakened, by the military campaign, and that's not a partisan reading. It is what the intelligence community appears to believe based on what's being leaked. Brennan makes the point plainly. More pounding has not brought Iran to its knees. If anything, it has consolidated it has consolidated the regime's domestic standing because foreign attacks that kill Iranian civilians tend to produce nationalist consolidation rather than popular pressure for surrender. The Iranian military still has a large inventory of missile launchers and missiles. The regime's essential character is intact. The strait remains contested. The ceasefire is not national, that both sides are disputing who fired first within hours of it supposedly being effective. What the administration is left with is the assertion of victory in a situation where the metrics of victory are undefined. The intelligence picture contradicts the public claims, and the adversary is simultaneously accepting a ceasefire and claiming they won it. Both sides can claim victory from the same military outcome is not evidence of a successful negotiation. It is evidence of an outcome where the facts on the ground don't particularly support either narrative, and both parties have the most domestic political reasons to declare success regardless. The institutional dimension of the leaks is what carries the longest tail. The intelligence community operates on the basis of credibility, the credibility of its assessments, the credibility of the process that produces them, and the credibility of the relationship between those assessments and the policy decisions made in their name. When a president publicly asserts things that classified intelligence directly contradicts and continues asserting them after the intelligence has been provided to policymakers, the people inside that system face a choice: stay quiet and become complicit in the misrepresentation, or find a way to get the accurate picture into public view. For sources choose the second option. That is not a routine thing. That is people making calculation that the cost of silence now exceeded the risk of speaking.